Her daughter-in-law popped champagne the morning she told Joanna Mercer to move out. Joanna, retired principal and widow, didn't flinch. Riley laughed, waving an $85 million lottery ticket like a crown. By sundown, Joanna had pulled her deed from the drawer, the one Riley forgot existed. They thought she was just a mother-in-law. They were about to learn she'd always been the owner. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Joanna Mercer woke to the sound of glass shattering and laughter, wild, breathless laughter that didn't belong in her quiet Awatuki kitchen. For a moment, she thought she'd dreamed it. Then came a high, shrieking voice that jolted her upright. 85 million, Darren! 85! It's real! The numbers hung in the air like thunder. Joanna's bare feet found the cool tile as she walked down the hallway, steady and unhurried. The morning sun poured through the arched window above the sink, lighting up the chaos. Riley stood in the middle of the kitchen, barefoot in a silk robe, hair tangled, mascara smudged from sleep. Her hands trembled as she clutched a paper ticket, waving it like a flag of conquest. Darren sat at the counter in his t-shirt, blinking at the laptop screen where the Arizona lottery website glowed blue. The winning numbers scrolled across, one by one, matching Riley's ticket perfectly. Riley's scream came again, sharper this time. It's our new life, Darren. We actually did it. Joanna stopped in the doorway. The smell of burnt toast and spilled champagne hit her nose. A bottle lay on its side, bubbles bleeding into the grout. She took in the scene, the glitter of sudden wealth, the trembling disbelief, and felt the first small crack in the life she'd built here. Riley finally noticed her. "Oh," she said flatly. "Morning." Joanna managed a small smile. "Morning. Sounds like congratulations are in order." Riley's eyes were wild, shining with triumph. She threw an arm around Darren's shoulders, pulling him close. "Can you believe it? $85 million. We're free. Finally free." "Free from what?" Joanna asked softly. Riley didn't answer. She just smiled, a tight, glossy smile that didn't reach her eyes. Darren rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding both women. "Mom, it's crazy. Riley's numbers hit. We're just trying to process it." Joanna looked at her son, the man she'd raised to be gentle, cautious, maybe too cautious. His shoulders slumped like a boy who'd stayed too long between two arguing adults. She nodded. "Then I'll let you two celebrate." She turned toward the coffee maker, but Riley's voice followed, sharp as glass. "Actually, Joanna, I think it's time we talked about next steps." Joanna paused. "Next steps? You've been so patient living here with us," Riley said, the tone drenched in false sweetness. "And now that things are changing, well, it's time we both have our space. You understand, right? A fresh start for everyone." Darren's head snapped up. "Riley." But Riley kept going, energized by her own momentum. "You've got your retirement, your pension. We'll make sure you're comfortable somewhere nice. But this house, well, it's time it reflected our new life. Modern, updated. You know." The words landed softly but carried weight. Joanna turned fully now, meeting Riley's gleaming eyes. "You mean you want me to move out?" Riley's smile brightened like a stage light. "Oh, don't make it sound so harsh. It's just space, privacy. You'll be fine somewhere else." Somewhere else. The phrase hung between them like a draft from an open door. Darren's throat worked, but no sound came. His hands fidgeted with the coffee mug until it slipped and hit the counter with a dull thud. Joanna inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "Well," she said after a moment, "I suppose congratulations are still in order." Riley laughed, relieved, mistaking Joanna's composure for surrender. "Exactly. We'll help you find a lovely place. Maybe one of those senior villas with the nice fountains." Joanna smiled faintly. We'll see, the coffee maker hissed, filling the silence. She poured herself a cup, the dark liquid rippling in the light. She took a sip, her reflection trembling in the surface. Riley was already pacing, talking about realtors and designers, throwing words like marble and penthouse into the air. Darren just stared down at his hands. Joanna set her mug down gently, almost tenderly. You'll want to be careful, Riley, she said, her tone even. Riley frowned. Careful? Big money moves fast, Joanna replied, sometimes faster than the people holding it. For a fleeting second, Riley's confidence faltered. Then she tossed her hair. Don't worry about me, Joanna. I always land on my feet. Joanna smiled again, softly, knowingly. I don't doubt it. She walked past them toward the living room, her steps unhurried, eyes drifting to the framed family photo on the wall. Darren's wedding day. Riley beaming in lace. Joanna in the background, hands folded, quiet pride in her eyes. She stood there for a heartbeat longer, then turned toward her room. Behind her, Riley laughed again, a high, manic sound echoing through the house. Joanna didn't look back. But as she closed her bedroom door, her voice carried, calm and clear through the hallway. Make sure you keep that ticket safe, Riley. Some papers are worth more than others. The laughter stopped, and in the stillness that followed, the house itself seemed to hold its breath. The next morning, sunlight poured into the kitchen like it didn't know it was unwelcome. Joanna stood at the counter, stirring her coffee slowly, watching the foam curl into thin spirals. Behind her, Riley's voice floated through the house, clipped, bright, commanding. Painters at 10, flooring samples by noon. I want light. Open, modern, Riley said into her phone. No, not beige. Luxury taupe. And make sure the backsplash sparkles. This place needs to feel like new money, not grandma's attic. The last words were deliberate. They landed heavy, right between Joanna's shoulder blades. Joanna didn't turn. She simply set her spoon down, neat and quiet, the sound barely audible over Riley's laughter. Darren shuffled in wearing yesterday's t-shirt, eyes hollow from too little sleep and too much avoidance. Morning, Joanna said. He nodded, mumbling something that could have been, hey, then poured himself coffee without looking at her. Riley's heels clicked across the tile. She was already dressed. White slacks, a linen blouse, hair styled as if she'd been expecting a camera crew. So, she said brightly, I've made a decision that works best for everyone. Joanna raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Riley clasped her hands, smiling like a politician. You'll have 14 days, Joanna. 2 weeks to get your things sorted. I'm being more than fair, honestly. Most people wouldn't be so generous. Darren's coffee cup froze midair. 14 days, Joanna repeated evenly. Yes, Riley said. You know, it's just practical. The contractors can start demo once you're settled somewhere cozy. There's a retirement community off Elliott Road I can call. Joanna's gaze drifted past her to the kitchen window, where the citrus trees swayed in the late morning breeze. Her husband had planted those 30 years ago, when the house was still new, and their son was small enough to run barefoot through the sprinklers. The lemon tree had survived 3 monsoons, 1 termite scare, and a lightning strike. It wasn't going anywhere. Neither was she. I'll manage, Joanna said. Riley beamed, mistaking composure for agreement. Perfect. I knew you'd understand. She turned back to her phone, already scrolling through home design photos. Oh, Darren, look at this marble island. Can't you see it here? Darren's eyes darted to Joanna, then back to the screen. Sure, he muttered. Joanna walked out of the kitchen without another word. In the hallway, the air felt cooler, quieter, the kind of quiet that hides plans. She closed her bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed. For a long minute, she just listened to the house breathe. The whir of the AC, the faint tapping of Riley's heels, the soft hum of a future being decorated around her. Then she reached for her phone. "Joanna, do you still have my old filing box?" The reply came less than a minute later. "Ellen, top shelf. Marked 1997. Get it?" Joanna smiled. Ellen Brewster never used extra words when the right ones would do. She pulled open the drawer of her nightstand, revealing a small portable printer she'd kept for years, a teacher's habit that had outlived her teaching days. Her laptop flickered awake, the glow illuminating a folder labeled Home Docs. She opened it and scrolled until she saw the scan she'd almost forgotten about. Mercer Property Title. Updated 2017 PDF. She clicked print. The sound was soft but thrilling, the paper sliding out, inch by inch, carrying 30 years of quiet ownership. She placed her fingertips lightly on the fresh sheet, tracing her own name where it stood alone above the line, Joanna L. Mercer. Down the hall, Riley was still talking, something about chandeliers and statement lighting. The irony wasn't lost on Joanna. She slipped the deed into a plain manila folder, then tucked it into her desk drawer beneath a stack of crossword puzzles. When she stood, her reflection in the mirror stopped her. Calm face, steady hands, a faint smile. She looked like someone who'd been told she had 14 days, and knew she'd need only one. In the living room, a loud thud echoed, Riley moving furniture again. Joanna stepped to the doorway and watched as Riley directed two delivery men carrying inboxes labeled Interior Elegance, velvet pillows, gold-trimmed vases, a rug the color of desert sand. Riley caught her watching. "Oh, Joanna," she said breezily. "I hope you don't mind the changes. It's just time this place felt like us, you know?" Joanna tilted her head. "Us?" Riley grinned. "Well, me." For a heartbeat, Joanna said nothing. Then she nodded once, slowly. "Of course. Everyone should live surrounded by what they love." Riley looked uncertain whether it was a compliment. Joanna turned away before she could decide. She walked down the hallway, the soft rustle of the deed still echoing in her mind. In her bedroom, she locked the door, set the folder on the dresser, and looked around the room. Her room. One more time. The light was shifting now. Gold against the curtains, warm as the Arizona evening beginning to fall. She picked up her phone again and texted one more message. "Joanna. Thank you, Ellen. Found it." Then she typed another line but didn't send it yet. "Joanna. I think it's time they remember whose name is on the line." She stared at the words for a moment, then hit send. Riley Mercer was born for an audience. She just hadn't had one big enough until now. By Saturday morning, her face was all over social media. The state lottery's Facebook page had posted the photo. Riley in a sequined champagne dress, hair curled and sprayed into submission, one manicured hand gripping an enormous check that said $85,000. Darren stood beside her, looking as if he'd wandered into the wrong dream. The caption read, "Phoenix's newest millionaire family celebrates their big win." Joanna saw it by accident. Ellen had texted her the link with no explanation, just a single word. Showtime. She clicked it while sitting at the breakfast table, her coffee growing cold. The comments rolled in faster than she could read them. "You're glowing. New house soon? Wow, from middle class to mansion life overnight." Riley had replied to several herself. "Working on it. Manifesting big changes. Nothing wrong with starting fresh." Joanna scrolled until she reached a video clip. Riley laughing into a cluster of microphones outside the lottery office saying, "We've outgrown our little house. It's time for something grander." Our little house. Joanna's lips twitched. She folded her reading glasses, placed them neatly beside the mug, and whispered to herself, "We'll see." By mid-morning, the sun was merciless over Phoenix. The air shimmered on the asphalt as Joanna pulled her silver Camry into a space-marked visitor, county recorder's office. Inside, the air conditioning hit like a wave of winter. A young clerk greeted her with a polite smile. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "Yes," Joanna said, her voice even. "I'd like to verify a property deed." "Address?" 4212 East Morning Dove Drive. The clerk typed quickly, nails clacking against the keyboard. The sound reminded Joanna of chalk tapping a board. Sharp, precise, final. After a moment, the girl turned the screen toward her. "Here it is," she said. "Looks like it's, still active. Under Joanna L. Mercer. No transfer on file." Joanna studied the record, the official seal glinting faintly on the digital copy. "And no secondary owners listed?" "No, ma'am. You're the sole title holder." Joanna's smile was small, measured, but her heart thumped once, not with surprise, but with quiet satisfaction. "That's all I needed. Thank you." She stepped outside again into the desert heat. The light was blinding, the air dry as paper. Somewhere above the courthouse, a jet sliced the sky open, leaving a white scar that faded almost instantly. Her phone buzzed. "Ellen." "Well?" Joanna typed back. "Joanna. Still mine. Every inch." The reply came almost immediately. "Ellen. They're rich. You're powerful. Difference is, yours can't evaporate in a tax year." Joanna chuckled, shaking her head. "You always did have a way with words," she murmured aloud. She slid behind the wheel of her car, started the engine, and sat there a moment longer, the cool air rushing over her. She opened her email app, her fingers steady. To milo.westa@westendassociateslaw.com. Subject: House inquiry. Body: Need to talk house. Deed confirmed under my name. Timing may be important. Joanna Mercer. She hit send before she could think twice. The message whooshed away into the invisible space between her calm and her fury. That night, the house glowed unnaturally bright. Riley had replaced the lamps with crystal ones, their fractured lights scattering across the walls like shattered ice. Boxes of designer decor were stacked in corners. Music played from a Bluetooth speaker, soft jazz that tried and failed to make chaos sound elegant. Riley sat at the counter, scrolling through her phone, probably refreshing her follower count. Darren was washing dishes, quiet as always. Joanna stood in the doorway, unseen for a moment. She watched them, the glittering couple, basking in reflected pixels, and felt that same deep steadiness in her chest. When Riley finally looked up, she smiled with the exaggerated patience of someone humoring an elderly relative. "Oh, Joanna," she said. "You saw the photos, right? Aren't they stunning?" Joanna nodded once. "Yes," she said. "They captured you perfectly." Riley beamed, missing the subtext entirely. Joanna walked to the far end of the kitchen and opened a drawer, pretending to look for something while quietly slipping a printed document from her purse, the copy from the recorder's office. She folded it twice and tucked it into her recipe binder, behind a page for lemon pie. "Dinner smells nice," she said, even though it didn't. "Thanks," Riley chirped. "We're celebrating. New chapter, new us." Joanna smiled faintly. "New, yes. I can see that." She turned toward the hallway, pausing just long enough to glance back at her son. He wouldn't meet her eyes. In her room, she closed the door softly and sat at her desk, the glow from the computer screen pale against the deepening dusk. Milo's reply had already arrived. Subject: House inquiry. Body: I'm available Monday morning. Bring the paperwork. Let's keep this quiet for now. Joanna stared at the email, then looked toward the window, where the last light was burning out over the desert horizon. "Quiet," she whispered. "That part I can do." She slid the deed copy into her briefcase, locked it, and leaned back in her chair, the faint strains of Riley's laughter drifting down the hall. It didn't sound triumphant anymore. It sounded nervous, almost brittle. Joanna smiled in the dark. Monday morning in downtown Phoenix felt like a furnace with traffic. The sunlight bounced off mirrored office towers and glass bank facades, turning every surface into a reflection of something too bright to stare at for long. Joanna parked near Jefferson Street, the kind of spot you had to parallel into with patience, something she had in abundance. The law offices of Weston Associates occupied the top floor of a renovated mid-rise, with glass walls and minimalist furniture that looked designed for people who never lost their tempers. The receptionist offered her lemon water and a smile too polished to be real. When Milo West appeared, he looked exactly as Ellen had described: mid-40s, trim, tan, and calm, in that way only people fluent in fine print could manage. He shook Joanna's hand and gestured toward his office. "Mrs. Mercer," he said, taking the manila folder she held like a sacred text. "Let's see what we're working with." He slid the documents out, adjusted his glasses, and began reading. His silence stretched long enough that Joanna's heart began to tap its own rhythm. Finally, he leaned back. "This," he said, tapping the page, "is airtight. Recorded, notarized, and reaffirmed in 2017. She has zero legal claim on this property. None." Joanna exhaled, slow and deliberate. "Then let them keep decorating." Milo's mouth twitched into a faint grin. "You'd rather they hang the drapes before they have to take them down?" "Exactly," Joanna said. "If they think they own the place, they'll dig in deeper. I'd rather they make it pretty before it's mine again." He studied her a moment, maybe surprised by her composure, maybe impressed by it. "I'll draft the confirmation notice today," he said. "Official but neutral. It'll remind them who holds the title without giving away our full hand." Joanna nodded. "Perfect." By Wednesday afternoon, the envelope landed in the Mercer mailbox like any other piece of mail, unassuming, white, and faded to change everything. Darren brought it in with a handful of bills and a grocery flyer, glancing at the sender line. "County Office of Property Records," he read aloud, frowning. Riley looked up from her laptop where she was designing a mood board titled "The Luxe Life." Probably junk mail. He tore it open anyway. His eyes flicked across the page, confusion blooming into something that looked like guilt. It says, "Notice of Ownership Confirmation." It lists Mom's name. Riley laughed, a quick brittle sound. "Oh, please, that's just your mom playing games. You really think she's got time to file paperwork?" "She used to be a principal," Darren said quietly. "She always has time for paperwork." Riley rolled her eyes. "Fine, I'll handle it. I'm not scared of a form letter." She plucked the notice from his hands, scanned it once, then tossed it into the trash can beside the counter. There, problem solved. Joanna, seated at the far end of the kitchen with a crossword book she wasn't really reading, didn't look up. She simply said, "You should keep official mail, Riley. Sometimes it matters later." Riley smirked. "Don't worry, Joanna. When we move you out, I'll label your boxes carefully. I'm gracious like that." That earned the faintest flicker of emotion from Joanna's face. Not fear. Not anger, but something cooler, quieter. "I'm sure you will." Back in his office that same afternoon, Milo uploaded the notarized documents to the county database, marking the filing complete. The digital record stamped itself with a quiet authority. Affidavit of Ownership Confirmation, Mercer, Joanna L. He leaned back, watching the system's confirmation message flicker on the screen before sending Joanna a short note. From Milo West. Subject: Filed and verified body. All official. Nothing can move forward on that property without your signature. She received the email while standing in the laundry room, folding towels that smelled faintly of lemon detergent and calm control. She read it twice, then smiled. a small, private smile that never reached her eyes. In the living room, Riley was on speakerphone with a moving company. Yes. 3 bedrooms. No. We're just relocating some older furniture. Sentimental stuff. Joanna heard every word but said nothing. She continued folding until each towel was perfectly square. When Riley hung up, she called out, "Oh, Joanna? Just letting you know. Movers are coming Friday. We'll help you pack your room." Joanna didn't answer. She carried the towels to the linen closet, stacked them neatly, and closed the door with deliberate quiet. Then she walked to her room, opened her desk drawer, and ran her fingers over the deed again. Smooth paper, firm ink, her name unshakable. Her phone buzzed. Ellen, again. Ellen. How's our lawyer friend? Joanna. Efficient. The ground just shifted, but they don't feel it yet. She slipped the phone into her pocket and looked toward the window. The Arizona sunset was bruising the horizon in shades of red and copper. Down the hall, she could hear Riley laughing again, ordering her own mother-in-law's eviction like it was a spa appointment. Joanna stood very still, her reflection framed in the fading light. "Friday," she whispered, "will be interesting." Friday came with heat that pressed against the windows like a held breath. The moving truck rumbled up the driveway at 10 sharp, its exhaust curling into the morning sky. Riley stood outside in oversized sunglasses and designer sandals, hands on hips, directing the two-man crew as if she were commanding an army. "Those boxes in the hall," she barked. "Everything labeled Joanna goes first. Bedroom, closet, storage. Doesn't matter. It all goes." Darren lingered near the porch, arms crossed, shoulders hunched. He looked like a man wishing to disappear into the stucco. Joanna stepped out of the front door with a calm so steady it unsettled everyone in the yard. She wore a pale blue blouse, crisp slacks, her hair pinned neatly. No rush, no pleading, just stillness. "Morning," she said. Riley turned, her voice already sharp. "We're getting started. Don't worry, I'll make sure your things aren't damaged. I'm not heartless." "I never said you were," Joanna replied, eyes on the truck. "Though I imagine the movers might not appreciate wasting their time." Riley frowned. "Excuse me." Joanna's phone buzzed in her hand. She didn't look at it yet. "You may want to hold off before loading anything," she said evenly. "There's been a development?" Riley folded her arms. "The only development is you dragging your feet. I told you. You have to leave. This is my house now." Joanna finally turned to meet her gaze, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "It never stopped being mine." For a moment, silence. Even the movers paused mid-step. Darren blinked, caught between disbelief and dread. Riley's tone snapped like a whip. "You're delusional. Darren, tell her. Tell her it's our house." But Darren's mouth opened and closed without sound. Joanna's phone buzzed again. She glanced down. An email notification from Milo West. "Filed civil claim. County Court, case through 8472. She read it once, calmly, then looked up. "You might want to call your lawyer, Riley. It seems we're at the point of paperwork." Riley's laugh was sharp and brittle. "You think you can sue me? Over my house? I'll bury you in court." Joanna's reply was soft, measured. "You can only bury what's yours to begin with." By Monday morning, the courtroom was too cold, the kind of air conditioning that made people fold their arms and look smaller than they were. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair and the patience of someone used to nonsense, adjusted her glasses and looked over the case file. "Mercer versus Mercer," she said, voice echoing slightly. "We're here to determine rightful possession of property located at 4212 East Morning Dove Drive." Riley sat at the defendant's table, dripping confidence in a white blazer, her attorney flipping through pages like a man praying for a miracle. Darren sat beside her, pale, staring straight ahead. Joanna sat across from them, posture perfect, hands folded atop a single folder. Milo sat beside her, his tone even when the judge invited him to speak. "Your Honor," he began, "we've provided the original deed, notarized and reaffirmed by county record in 2017. Mrs. Joanna L. Mercer remains the sole title holder. My client never sold, transferred, or gifted the property. Any occupation by the defendants has been by invitation only." Riley's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this is absurd. My client and her husband have lived in that home for years, made significant improvements, and—" "Do you have proof of ownership transfer?" the judge asked flatly. He hesitated. "We're in the process of—" The judge's eyebrow lifted. "Then you don't." Riley shifted in her seat. "This is ridiculous." The male said. "Mrs. Mercer," the judge interrupted, tone clipped, "please refrain from speaking out of turn." Milo slid another document forward. "Additionally, Your Honor, we filed an affidavit confirming the deed last week, already entered into county record. As of now, Mrs. Mercer's ownership is legally uncontested." The judge scanned the page, then looked up. "This is clear enough for me." Riley's chair scraped back. "You can't just—" "I can," the judge said, voice firm, "and I will. The property belongs to Mrs. Joanna Mercer." Riley froze, her mouth half open. The room was suddenly very still. The judge continued, eyes steady. "Mrs. Riley Mercer, Mr. Darren Mercer, you have 3 days to vacate the premises. If you do not, I will authorize law enforcement to enforce removal." Riley blinked, color draining from her face. 3 days? "Consider it generous," the judge said, signing the order with a decisive stroke. Milo gathered the documents, nodding respectfully. Joanna rose, smooth and silent. Riley spun toward her. "You think this is over? I'll sue you for emotional distress, harassment, whatever I can." Joanna paused by the end of the table, meeting her eyes with a kind of calm that didn't need words. "You can try," she said softly, "but you'll need an address first." Riley's lips trembled, fury rising with nowhere to go. Joanna turned and walked toward the courtroom doors, the echo of her heels steady and measured. Milo followed, the order in his hand. Outside, sunlight poured through the tall windows, cutting across the marble floor. Milo exhaled. "Well," he said, "that went about as clean as it could." Joanna adjusted her bag, the faintest hint of a smile curving her lips. "It's not over," she said quietly. "It's only the part where they start believing it is." Behind them, Riley's shout carried through the heavy courtroom doors. "This isn't fair! That house is mine!" Joanna didn't turn. She just kept walking toward the light spilling across the courthouse steps, each stride deliberate, unhurried, unstoppable. The desert heat hadn't let up all week, but inside the Mercer house, it was winter cold. The air carried tension sharper than broken glass. Cardboard boxes lined the hallway, half open and messy, their contents spilling like the remnants of a life packed too quickly. Riley stormed through the living room, every step a thunderclap against the hardwood floor. She was in leggings and an oversized t-shirt that said "Blessed," her hair knotted, her sunglasses perched on top of her head like armor. "This is insanity!" she shouted, yanking framed photos from the wall. "You can't just take a house from people." From the kitchen doorway, Joanna watched her with the patient stillness of someone who had already heard the end of this song. "It was never yours to take," she said softly. Riley spun, eyes bright and furious. "You're smug now, but you'll regret this. Darren and I built this home. We made it ours." Joanna's tone stayed level, measured, almost kind. "You redecorated, dear. That's not the same thing." Riley's face flushed crimson. She threw a throw pillow across the room, where it hit the couch and flopped harmlessly onto the floor. "Don't talk to me like I'm one of your students." Joanna tilted her head. Then don't behave like one. For a long, tight moment, the only sound was the crinkle of packing tape being ripped across a box. Darren stood near the stairs, hands buried in his pockets, eyes flicking between his wife and his mother. "This is ridiculous," he muttered finally, voice low. Joanna turned to him. "What's ridiculous," she said, "is pretending money erases memory." He looked down, jaw working but words refusing to form. Riley glared at him as if betrayal were a contagious disease. "Are you really just going to stand there?" she hissed. "She's humiliating us." Darren's voice was small but steady. "No, Riley, she's just reminding us what's true." That broke something in Riley. "Fine," she snapped. "You two can rot together in this mausoleum. I'm done." She grabbed her keys off the counter with a violent clatter and marched towards the front door. Her diamond bracelet caught the sunlight, scattering a glitter that felt like mockery. Joanna followed her only as far as the porch. "Need help with the boxes?" she asked calmly, voice perfectly polite. Riley froze halfway down the steps, disbelief twisting her expression. "You think this is funny?" "No," Joanna said, her tone even. "But I do think it's over." Riley didn't answer. She stomped to the driveway, where a rented black luxury SUV waited with its engine idling. She threw the last suitcase into the trunk and slammed it shut hard enough to make the whole vehicle tremble. As she climbed into the driver's seat, she glared back toward the house. "Enjoy your empty little kingdom, Joanna. You'll die in that place, alone." Joanna smiled faintly. "At least I'll die where I belong." The SUV roared to life, tires screeching as Riley peeled out onto the street, the sound echoing off the neighboring stucco walls. Darren lingered in the doorway, shoulders sagging. For the first time, his eyes met his mother's without apology. "I didn't think it would come to this," he said. Joanna stepped closer. "It always comes to this, Darren, when people forget where things start." He nodded, eyes glassy. "She's angry now, but she'll cool off. Maybe she'll spin," Joanna interrupted softly. "Anger is her oxygen. Don't stand too close when she burns." He gave a hollow laugh that wasn't really laughter. "You sound like Dad." Joanna's expression softened. "Your father believed in letting people teach themselves lessons. I'm just giving Riley her classroom." The sound of a car door closing outside broke the silence. Milo West stood on the porch, sleeves rolled up, a ring of keys glinting in his hand. "Good afternoon," he said, nodding politely at Darren before turning to Joanna. "Court orders active. You ready?" Joanna gestured toward the open front door. "Go ahead." Darren stepped aside as Milo moved through the house, testing each lock, his motions practiced and unhurried. The sound of metal clicking into place echoed like punctuation marks at the end of a long, ugly sentence. When he finished, he handed Joanna a small envelope. "New keys. Everything's reset." She took them carefully, weighing them in her palm like something more symbolic than metal. "Thank you, Milo." "Just doing my job," he said. "Still, I'd say it's satisfying to see justice that straightforward." "Straightforward," Joanna murmured, slipping the keys into her pocket. "That's one word for it." Milo nodded and headed for the door, leaving mother and son in the hush that followed. Darren looked around the house. The empty hallway, the half-packed boxes, the faint scent of Riley's perfume fading into the air. "It feels different," he said quietly. Joanna glanced toward the living room, where the sunlight now fell uninterrupted across the hardwood floor. "It feels right." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You should go get some air." He hesitated, then nodded and stepped outside. Joanna stood alone for a long moment, her reflection caught in the window glass. Outside, the SUV was gone. Only dust hung in the heat where Riley's tires had been. Joanna turned the lock on the front door, the final metallic click echoing like the end of a chapter. Then she whispered to the still air, welcome home. The following Saturday, Awatuki's quiet desert street came alive with noise. The wrong kind of noise. Bass-heavy music thudded from 2 blocks over, and the smell of grilled shrimp and perfume drifted through the heat. Riley Mercer was throwing her lottery celebration, or as the neighbors were calling it behind drawn curtains, the comeback party no one asked for. She'd rented a sprawling stucco house at the edge of the subdivision. Bigger, flashier, with a pool shaped like a champagne glass and rental palm trees trucked in from Scottsdale. A red and gold balloon arch framed the front door. A banner read, "Lucky and Liberated." Joanna saw the banner from her front porch while watering her rose bush. The water hissed against the soil, her motions steady, unhurried. She could hear faint laughter carried on the breeze, sharp, forced, brittle. She smiled to herself. "Liberated," she murmured. "That's one word for it." Across the street, Mrs. Delgado from next door wandered over, still in her gardening gloves. "You hear about Riley's party?" she asked, leaning on the fence. "Half the cul-de-sac got invites." "Half?" Joanna asked. "Uh-huh. Funny thing, though, a good number of them suddenly had plans." Mrs. Delgado smirked. "Imagine that." Joanna's lips curved faintly. "Imagine." The music thumped louder for a moment, then dipped again. Somewhere in the mix, Riley's high-pitched laughter rose and fell, followed by clinking glasses and the whir of a rented margarita machine. By 7 o'clock, the party was in full swing, the kind that photographs better than it feels. Joanna saw it all without leaving her house. People posted clips on social media. Riley in a glitter dress, oversized check propped behind her like a prop from her past life. "To new beginnings!" she shouted into a phone camera, voice sugar-coated with champagne. Her caption read, "Some people lose their homes. I build empires." Chakra power move. In the comments, a few followers cheered her on, but most were less kind. "Didn't she kick out her mother-in-law? Heard she got sued over that house. Money can't buy manners, sweetie." Within an hour, Riley had deleted half the comments. But gossip spreads faster than champagne bubbles. By Sunday morning, Ellen's phone buzzed before sunrise. She answered with her usual gruffness. "It's too early for drama unless it's coffee-related." On the other end, Greg Smith, the clerk from the state lottery office, chuckled nervously. "Sorry, Ellen, but you might want to tell your friend Joanna that Riley Mercer's been talking. Loudly." Ellen sat up straighter. "Talking how?" "Bragging. Said she bought out her in-laws and was getting the place remodeled for a TV feature. She even mentioned something about lawyers trying to harass her." He hesitated. "She's making herself sound like the victim." Ellen sighed. Bless her heart. She doesn't even know which hole she's digging yet. That afternoon, Ellen dropped by Joanna's house with a grocery bag full of lemons and gossip. Joanna was in the backyard, trimming her new rose bush. "She's running her mouth again," Ellen said without preamble. "Greg called me, said she's turning herself into a martyr with a spray tan." Joanna didn't look surprised. She simply brushed a fallen petal off her glove. "That was fast," she murmured. Ellen set the bag down with a thump. "She's lucky you're civilized." A lesser woman would have posted the deed online with a bow on it. Joanna smiled faintly. "Tempting, but I prefer paper trails to public ones." Ellen tilted her head. "Meaning?" Joanna reached for her phone, her tone calm, almost detached. "Meaning I already sent everything to Milo." By Monday, Riley's phone pinged with a new email from Weston Associates, LLP. Subject: Notice of Potential Defamation. Mrs. Mercer, statements regarding the property at 4212 East Morning Dove Drive, as well as your representation of ownership, are factually false and legally actionable. Please consider this your formal warning prior to escalation. Monsieur West, attorney at law. Riley read it 3 times, each word sinking like a stone. He's bluffing, she muttered, though her voice betrayed her. Darren said nothing, sitting at the edge of the couch, scrolling through social media comments, tearing her apart. "This is all your mother's doing," Riley hissed. "She's poisoning people against me." Darren finally looked up. "No," he said quietly. "She's not saying anything at all. That's the problem." Riley stood, pacing. "I'll control the story myself." Within an hour, she opened her phone and posted a new message on her freshly minted Riley Reborn page. "You try to help people, and they call you toxic. But sometimes, family can be the worst poison. Cheer boundaries, Sheik's toxic in-laws, Sheik healing journey." Within minutes, the replies poured in. "Girl, you need a therapist, not a hashtag. This ain't healing, it's PR. Didn't the judge evict you?" Riley slammed her phone down. The glass cracked at the corner. Outside, through the half-open blinds, the desert wind picked up, scattering the last of her glittering party balloons down the street, where one snagged on a cactus and popped. Across town, Joanna poured herself a cup of tea, her porch bathed in golden light. Ellen called. She posted something again. Joanna sipped her tea. "Of course she did. Do you want me to respond?" Ellen asked. "No," Joanna said, setting the cup down. "Let her keep talking. Words can travel fast. But the law?" She paused, eyes narrowing with quiet certainty. "The law moves heavier." Outside, the roses swayed in the soft wind, their petals unbothered by the noise drifting from miles away. The next time Joanna walked into a courtroom, the air felt different, sharper, colder, but somehow cleaner. She wore her usual pressed slacks and soft cardigan, the same outfit she'd worn to her retirement ceremony years ago. To her, it wasn't armor. It was reminder. Riley arrived late, sunglasses hiding half her face, flanked by a young male attorney whose confidence seemed to grow every time Riley whispered in his ear. Darren trailed behind her, his tie crooked, his expression hollow. Judge Ward looked unimpressed before the hearing even began. "Case number 8472B, she said briskly. "Riley Mercer versus Joanna Mercer. Motion for reconsideration on property ownership." She glanced up. "Mrs. Mercer, again?" Milo stood smoothly. "Yes, Your Honor. We're here because Mrs. Riley Mercer's counsel is alleging the existing property deed is outdated and unclear." Riley's attorney cleared his throat, clearly rehearsed. "Your Honor, our position is simple. The deed in question, while technically valid, does not reflect modern occupancy or shared assets accrued through familial residence. We believe—" Judge Ward raised a hand, cutting him off. "I'm going to stop you right there. Are you claiming any recorded transfer, sale, or joint ownership document exists?" He blinked. "Not exactly. But the spirit of ownership." "The spirit?" The judge's tone snapped. "Last I checked, property law doesn't operate on seance." Laughter rippled softly through the gallery. Even Milo allowed himself a faint smirk. Joanna, sitting beside him, kept her face unreadable. Her hands were folded on her lap, still as marble. "Your Honor," Milo said, sliding a folder onto the bench. "To clarify any question about recency, I've provided the notarized deed updates from 2017, reaffirmed under the Maricopa County record. The property remains in my client's sole legal ownership." Judge Ward flipped through the pages briefly. Her pen made a single note, then stopped. "This is perfectly valid. File stamps clear. Signatures notarized." She set the papers aside, already finished. "I see no reason to waste further court time." Riley leaned forward, voice rising. "He's twisting it. She only updated that after we moved in. She was waiting to do this." The judge fixed her with a level stare. "Mrs. Mercer, calm yourself. Whether you find the timing convenient or not, the law doesn't bend to tantrums." Riley froze, her mouth hanging open, outrage trembling at the edges. "Motion denied," Judge Ward said firmly. "All claims of ambiguity are dismissed with prejudice. The property remains under Mrs. Joanna Mercer's ownership, full and final." A single gavel strike echoed through the room. Riley's lawyer sagged slightly in defeat. Riley herself just sat there, lips pressed tight, the flush on her cheek spreading downward. She didn't speak, didn't even look at Darren. Milo stood and buttoned his jacket, voice polite but edged with satisfaction. "Thank you, Your Honor." Joanna rose beside him, her movements deliberate, graceful. She didn't glance at Riley. She didn't need to. Outside the courthouse, the Phoenix sun flared hot against the pale stone steps. Milo handed her a copy of the ruling, the edges still crisp. "You're untouchable now," he said quietly. Joanna smiled faintly. "I prefer unbothered." He chuckled. "Same thing in this town." That evening, Ellen appeared on Joanna's porch carrying a tin of lemon shortbread and a grin that could cut steel. "Still your house?" she said proudly, handing over the tin. "Still your rules." Joanna set the cookies on the patio table, the scent of sugar and citrus rising into the warm dusk. "I told you, paper wins over noise." Ellen poured 2 glasses of iced tea from a thermos. And here I was, ready to start practicing my courtroom clapbacks. Joanna laughed softly, genuine and light. "Next time." They sat for a while, watching the desert sky shift from orange to violet. Across the street, the mailbox stood crooked where Riley's moving crew had once dented it with a dolly. Joanna rose, retrieved a small rosebush from beside the porch, its roots wrapped neatly in burlap, and carried it to the curb. Ellen raised an eyebrow. "Planting season's over, isn't it?" Joanna knelt in the soil, her knees pressing into the warm earth. "For most things," she said. "But roses don't care what calendar you keep." She dug slowly, pressing her hands into the dirt until the roots took hold. Then she stood, brushing off her palms, the setting sun catching her silver hair. From somewhere far off, faint music drifted. The sound of another one of Riley's desperate attempts at reinvention. Joanna looked toward the horizon, her expression calm but firm. "Let her play her music," she said quietly. "I'm building something that lasts." Ellen smiled. "You always were good at that." Joanna didn't answer. She just adjusted the soil around the rosebush, tamped it firm, and stepped back to admire her work. A simple mark of permanence against all the noise in the world. The petals caught the dying light, glowing soft pink against the desert dust. The morning after the court ruling, Phoenix woke under a haze of heat and quiet. Joanna sat at her kitchen table, the same table that had once hosted family dinners and birthday cakes, now scattered with neatly stacked documents and a cooling cup of tea. The faint smell of lemon shortbread lingered from Ellen's visit the night before. Milo had emailed her early. "If you're ready, we can move forward with the estate update today. Clean slate." Simple language. Joanna typed back a single word. "Yes." By noon, she was sitting in Milo's office again, sunlight slicing across the floor like gold ribbons. He adjusted his glasses and reviewed the typed draft in front of him. "You've removed your son and daughter-in-law entirely," he said carefully. "Yes." Joanna's voice was calm, not cruel. "They've already taken what they wanted from me. This isn't punishment, it's closure." Milo nodded slowly, respecting the quiet conviction in her tone. "And you're naming Ellen Brewster as executor?" "I am." She glanced toward the window, where the Phoenix skyline shimmered in the distance. "She's practical, organized, and not afraid of hard truths. Besides, she already knows where I keep everything." Milo smiled faintly. "And this literacy foundation you mentioned?" Joanna's expression softened. "The West Mesa Literacy Trust. We started it when I was a principal. grants for adult reading programs. My husband would have wanted it to keep growing. Then let's make that official. Milo signed and dated the paperwork, sliding it toward her. With this, everything transitions cleanly. I'll file the trust update within 24 hours. No one else can contest it. Joanna picked up the pen, hesitating only for a moment before signing her name. The motion felt final, like closing a door she'd left open too long. That evening, the house smelled like cinnamon and butter. Joanna was baking, her hands dusted in flour, her apron crisp and clean. A quiet storm of thought brewed behind her calm expression. On the counter, her phone buzzed. Family group chat. Mercer moments. Riley. So happy things are finally settling. Big changes coming soon. Riley. Life's about second chances, right? Riley. We should catch up soon, Joanna. Talk things through. Maybe coffee? Joanna wiped her hands on a towel and stared at the screen. She could almost hear Riley's faux sweetness in each line, the emoji smiles masking calculation. A few moments later, Darren chimed in with a hesitant message. Darren. Mom, hope you're doing okay. I heard about the ruling. Maybe we can all move on now. Joanna typed a reply, then erased it. Typed again. Erased again. Finally, she set the phone face down on the counter and went back to kneading dough. The rhythm was steady, deliberate. The same rhythm she'd used to get through hard years of teaching, loss, and life. When Ellen arrived an hour later, she brought coffee and the same bluntness that had made her indispensable. You're quiet, she said, sitting down. That's either a good sign or a dangerous one. Joanna smiled faintly. It's both. Ellen peered at the cooling trays of cookies. What's all this? Peace offerings? Insurance, Joanna said simply. Ellen raised a brow. Against what? Joanna took off her apron. Against doing anything rash. Sometimes it helps to work with your hands when the rest of the world wants you to break things. Ellen chuckled. Fair enough. Though I did bring gossip. Of course you did. Greg from the lottery office says Riley's still telling anyone who will listen that you tricked her with fine print. Joanna's expression didn't change. Let her talk. Her mouth writes checks her logic can't cash. Ellen laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. When she caught her breath, she leaned forward. You really are done with them, aren't you? Joanna looked toward the window, where her new rosebush bent gently in the wind. Completely. Ellen nodded approvingly. Then let them scheme. They're already out. But across town, Riley was very much in. Her rented living room was cluttered with open envelopes, legal websites, and a spiral notebook filled with scrawled notes in purple ink. She'd been quiet for 3 days. Too quiet. Darren thought she was grieving the loss of the house. He didn't realize she was planning her next move. Mom's getting older, she muttered to herself, typing into her laptop. Living alone. No real supervision. Someone should manage things. She clicked through an online portal titled Arizona Legal Aid Services. Power of Attorney Request Form. Her hand trembled slightly as she filled in the blanks. Name of principal? Joanna L. Mercer. Name of agent? Riley A. Mercer. When it asked for the reason, Riley typed, for health and financial safety. She smiled tightly, pressing submit. A confirmation email pinged her inbox instantly. Your power of attorney application is being processed for court review. Riley sat back, exhaling. Let's see who's really in charge now. Back in Ahwatukee, Joanna opened the oven and slid out a tray of golden cookies. The sweet smell filled the house, warm and calm. She didn't know yet that a new storm was already forming, one written not in gossip or glitter, but in forged lines of legal ink. Outside, the sun bled down into the desert horizon, turning the sky the color of parchment and fire. The email came through Milo's encrypted inbox just after dawn. The subject line read, Urgent, Power of Attorney Filing, Mercer, Joanna L. At first, he assumed it was a clerical copy, maybe a duplicate of paperwork he'd already filed for Joanna's trust update. But when he opened the PDF, his brow furrowed. The signature was wrong. The handwriting was too round, too youthful. And the notary stamp? Expired 3 years ago. Milo leaned back in his chair, lips tightening. Well, he muttered, someone just made a very expensive mistake. He picked up the phone and called his paralegal. Pull up every POA submission on the Mercer file. I want timestamps, source IPs, and scanned signatures. Now. Within the hour, he had his answer. The application originated from an online portal linked to Riley Mercer's personal email address. Milo's reply to the county office was short, surgical. 2. Clerk of Maricopa, probate subject, fraudulent power of attorney attempt. Immediate flag required filing associated with Joanna L. Mercer is falsified. Signature is counterfeit. Notary stamp expired. Please forward to State Fraud Division. M. West, S. Key. He attached the PDF, hit send, and exhaled. He'd seen greed dress itself in charm before, but rarely had it shown its face so quickly. When Joanna arrived later that morning, Milo was waiting with 2 cups of coffee and a folder already labeled Fraud Response. You're not going to like this, he said, sliding the papers across his desk. Joanna read the forged document slowly, the words blurring into something sharp and cold. Her own name, her own identity, sitting above Riley's as if she'd handed it over. She really did this, Joanna said softly. She did, Milo confirmed. And badly. The notary stamp alone is laughable. But this isn't just paperwork fraud. This is an attempt at control. Power of attorney gives financial access, health decision rights, everything. Joanna's expression didn't flicker. Then we take it all back. We already did, he said. I filed it with the state within the hour. The fraud unit's fast when they smell arrogance. Joanna leaned back in her chair, her voice quiet but edged. Arrogance has a scent? Milo smiled faintly. It does when it wears perfume that costs more than a car payment. That earned a small, dry laugh from her, but only briefly. Can she be charged? She will be, Milo said, and you'll want to file for a restraining order immediately. I'll draft it now. 2 days later, Riley was served at her rental home. A courier handed her the envelope while she was filming another shaky video for her Riley Reborn channel. Mrs. Mercer, he said, polite but curt, you've been named in a fraud complaint. She blinked, the camera still recording. What? He pointed to the papers. Forgery, falsified document submission, unauthorized attempt at power of attorney. You'll need to appear in county court on the 21st. Riley's breath caught. That's ridiculous. I was just protecting her interests. But the courier had already turned away. The next day, local financial regulators fined her $15,000 and flagged her in the public misconduct database. Her name appeared on the state's fraud watch list, nestled neatly between 2 mortgage scammers and a tax consultant from Tempe. When Milo called Joanna with the update, she was at home, folding laundry with the same serene focus she applied to every storm. She's officially flagged, he said, and the restraining order's been approved. Joanna's hands didn't stop moving. Good, she said simply. She'll spin it, Milo warned. You know that. Let her, Joanna replied. Every lie just circles back faster now. Her phone buzzed on the table. Darren's name lit the screen. A long text preview filled the top. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was doing this. I never wanted it to go this far. Please believe me. I don't know how to fix it. Joanna read it twice, then pressed the screen dark. She didn't delete it. Not yet. But she didn't reply either. That evening, Ellen stopped by with her usual blunt warmth and a bag of takeout. Well, the fraud queen finally got her crown, she said, setting the bag down. Greg texted me. Said even the lottery office knows about it. Joanna smiled faintly. News travels fast. Ellen poured 2 glasses of wine. Money didn't change her, you know. It exposed her. Peeled her right open. Joanna raised her glass slightly. And what's left inside? Hot air, Ellen said, clinking their glasses together. They drank in comfortable silence as the sun melted over the desert, long shadows creeping across the floor. For a brief, peaceful moment, it felt like the story might be ending, the lies unraveled, the noise finally quiet. But just as Joanna began stacking the dinner plates, her phone buzzed again. A new email. Unknown sender. Subject line: Notice of intent to counterclaim. Riley A. Mercer. Joanna's fingers tightened around the edge of the phone. Outside, the wind rose, scattering dust and petals from her rose bush across the porch like a warning. The courthouse air was heavy again, thicker this time, like the desert itself was holding its breath. Reporters lined the marble steps outside, their microphones angled toward the door as if waiting for lightning to strike twice. Riley arrived first, flanked by a different attorney. Older, more polished, more expensive. She wore a cream suit that shimmered faintly under the fluorescent lights, and a defiant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Darren trailed behind her, face pale, tie loose, the weight of exhaustion settling into his shoulders. Inside the courtroom, Joanna sat quietly beside Milo, who was reviewing a thick binder with practiced calm. She looked the same as she had in every hearing, neat, composed, unfazed. But her eyes, sharp and steady, flickered once toward her son before returning to the bench. The judge, the same Judge Ward, adjusted her glasses. Case number 8472C, Riley Mercer versus Joanna Mercer. Allegations of elder manipulation and fraudulent coercion. Her tone was dry, unimpressed. Counsel, you may proceed. Riley's attorney stood, buttoning his jacket with performative precision. Your Honor, this case concerns a systematic effort by the defendant, Mrs. Joanna Mercer, to control and exploit her son and daughter-in-law through psychological and financial manipulation. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. The attorney's voice swelled with false indignation. Our client, Mrs. Riley Mercer, was pressured, humiliated, and effectively displaced from a property that should, in moral equity if not legal technicality, belong jointly to the family. The defendant's calculated actions demonstrate. Judge Ward raised a single hand. Counsel, spare me the theatrics. Evidence, please. He cleared his throat. Yes, Your Honor. We have statements. From whom? The pause was telling. My client, Mrs. Mercer. And anyone else? Another pause. Not at this time. The judge's sigh echoed across the room. Mr. West, your turn. Milo rose smoothly, no flourish, no hesitation. Thank you, Your Honor. He opened the binder on the table and slid several thick folders forward. We have 24 years of tax records, maintenance invoices, and notarized title affirmations, all under Mrs. Joanna Mercer's name. Every repair, every property tax payment, every insurance premium paid by her personally. He lifted a second document, glancing briefly at Riley's attorney. We also have copies of the plaintiff's own social media statements, bragging that she bought out her in-laws and was remodeling for television. Statements which contradict her current claim of victimhood. A low murmur of amusement rippled through the spectators. Judge Ward leaned back, rubbing her temple. So she publicly claimed to own a property she never legally possessed? Yes, Your Honor, Milo said simply, and then attempted to obtain power of attorney through forged documentation. Riley stiffened, her attorney whispering furiously into her ear. The judge's expression flattened. I've seen enough. But, Riley started, half standing. Sit down, Mrs. Mercer. Riley froze. Judge Ward's gavel came down with a sound like thunder. This case is dismissed with prejudice. The court finds no evidence of coercion, fraud, or undue influence. Furthermore, the plaintiff's history of falsified filings will be forwarded to the state's Legal Ethics Board for review. The courtroom fell silent. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause. Riley's mouth opened, then shut again. Her hands shook on the table. You can't. This isn't. But Judge Ward was already signing the dismissal order. Darren sank lower in his chair, his eyes fixed on the floor. His lips moved as if to speak, but no sound came. Joanna rose quietly, her folder clasped to her chest. She didn't look at Riley. She didn't look at Darren. She simply walked toward the courtroom doors, her steps even and unhurried. Outside, the flashbulbs exploded instantly, reporters calling her name, cameras catching the calm tilt of her chin. She said nothing. Milo shielded her with a hand as they descended the courthouse steps. Clean, he said under his breath. Swift and clean. Joanna gave the faintest nod. I told you. Paper wins over noise. Milo smiled. You've made it an art form. As they reached the car, the first headline was already buzzing across phones and local news tickers. Lottery winner loses court fight over family home. Judge slams baseless manipulation claims as Phoenix woman reclaims dignity. And her deed. Back inside the courthouse, Riley stood motionless as her attorney packed up his papers. It's not over, she whispered, though even she didn't sound convinced. Darren placed a trembling hand on her arm. Riley. It needs to be. She jerked away. You think she won? No. She just thinks she did. Darren said nothing. Outside, the sound of cameras still echoed faintly through the glass. The clicks, the voices, the end of one story and the beginning of something darker. Far across the city, in the quiet glow of her kitchen, Joanna placed the court copy of the ruling beside her husband's old photo on the mantel. Peace, she whispered, almost like a prayer. But before she could exhale, her phone vibrated on the counter. One new message. Unsigned. You might own the house, Joanna, but I'm not done with you yet. She read it once, set the phone down, and turned off the light. The next morning dawned gold and merciless over Phoenix, sunlight striking every window like a truth that couldn't be ignored. Joanna sat at her kitchen table again, the same spot where so much of the story had unfolded. Except this time, there were no legal papers spread out in front of her. Just a leather notebook, an old fountain pen, and a folder marked the Mercer Literacy Endowment. She'd written the name neatly across the front herself, her husband's initials underneath. In memory of Thomas J. Mercer, 1948-2016. Ellen sat across from her, sipping coffee, glasses perched halfway down her nose. So, this is real? She asked, a touch of disbelief in her voice. It's already happening, Joanna said. Half the appraised value of the house will go directly to the West Mesa Literacy Trust. The rest of my estate is protected in the endowment. Kids and adults will get the library funding we never had enough for when I was teaching. Ellen gave a low whistle. You realize you're doing more with that house than Riley ever could have done with $85 million. Joanna smiled faintly. That's the point. Milo joined them an hour later, sleeves rolled up, his tone brisk but respectful. Everything's ready for your signature. This isn't just philanthropy, Joanna, it's permanence. I'm not doing it for permanence, she said softly, scanning the last page. I'm doing it so something good comes out of the noise. Milo nodded. Then this will be filed by end of day. Once the endowment transfers, your name and Thomas's will be tied to it in perpetuity. No one, not a family member, not a court, can touch it. Joanna looked up. Good. That's how I want it. Ellen grinned. So when do I get my fancy title? Milo turned to her with a smile. Effective immediately, Ms. Brewster. Co-trustee, you'll oversee the community grants. Ellen pretended to fan herself. Finally, a title that doesn't involve retirement discounts or free coffee refills. Joanna chuckled. You earned it, Ellen. You were here through all of it. You're the only one I trust with the future. Ellen sobered a little, her eyes warm. You did all the heavy lifting, Joe. I just handed you a few good shovels. By late afternoon, word of the endowment had made its way into the local paper. A headline appeared above the fold. Retired principal donates half her home's value to Arizona school libraries. Education lasts longer than fortune, says Joanna Mercer. The story spread faster than Joanna expected. Former students commented online, teachers shared it across social media, and one local news station even ran a short feature during the evening broadcast. The segment ended with a photograph, Joanna and Thomas at a ribbon-cutting ceremony from 20 years ago, smiling beside a shelf of donated books. Riley saw it from her couch, where she'd been scrolling through headlines she couldn't control. Her name, once glittering with lottery glamour, now surfaced mostly in connection with lawsuits, fines, and public failure. Her phone buzzed. A PR rep from her management team, one of the few who hadn't dropped her, was texting furiously. PR manager. We can spin this. Redemption angle. You and Joanna, reunited. A sit-down interview. Healing narrative. It's good optics. Riley. She won't talk to me. PR manager. Try. You need the photo. Within the hour, an email reached Milo's office, a request for a joint interview to publicly reconcile. When he read it aloud, Joanna's eyebrows arched slightly. Reconcile? She repeated. Ellen burst out laughing. With who? The woman who forged your name and sued you for existing. Milo smirked. Should I draft the decline? Joanna's voice was calm, almost gentle. Yes, but be polite. She's fighting ghosts. I've already buried mine. That evening, the sky bled orange over the desert. Joanna and Ellen sat on the porch, sharing a quiet meal. The neighborhood, once buzzing with Riley's gossip, was still now, peaceful in the way earned only after storms. Milo stopped by just before sunset, dropping off a manila envelope. All filed, he said. Your husband's name is permanently attached to the trust. The foundation paperwork is complete. I even framed a copy of the front page for you. Joanna smiled and took the frame, studying the headline again. Thomas would have liked this, she murmured. He believed in slow rewards. Ellen clinked her glass against Joanna's. And here's to slow revenge, too. Joanna laughed softly, the sound drifting into the warm air. I didn't do this for revenge. Ellen tilted her head. No, but it's a nice side effect. They all laughed then. An easy, unguarded kind of laughter that hadn't been possible for months. When the laughter faded, Milo stood to leave. I'll file the final closure documents in the morning, he said. You're free and clear now, Joanna. She looked out at the desert, the sun dipping low behind the mountains, the air shimmering gold. Free, she repeated, the word like a sigh. But as the first evening breeze carried through the yard, a faint sound rose from the street, the click of heels on pavement. A shadow moved near the gate, just out of sight. Joanna frowned slightly. Ellen followed her gaze. What is it? Probably nothing, Joanna said. But her hand rested unconsciously on the arm of her chair, steady, protective. The wind carried a single note of perfume, familiar and sour. Then the sound of heels faded into the dark. The knock came on a Sunday morning. Soft, hesitant. 3 taps, a pause, then one more. Joanna looked up from the newspaper, her hand stilling on the coffee mug. Outside, the Arizona sun had barely climbed past the horizon, painting the street in pale gold. She knew that rhythm. She'd known it for 40 years. When she opened the door, Darren stood there, thinner than she remembered, his hair messy, his eyes sunken from sleeplessness. He looked like someone who'd been living with ghosts. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. Joanna didn't move. "Darren." He shifted, hands buried in his pockets. "Can I come in?" She studied him for a moment, not to decide if he deserved entry, but to decide if she was ready for whatever truth he'd finally dragged with him. Then she stepped aside. "Coffee's fresh. You can pour your own." He nodded, grateful, slipping into the kitchen like a guest instead of a son. The smell of lemon polish and baked bread filled the air. Everything neat, everything calm. Darren poured coffee, took a seat at the table where so many arguments had quietly lived. "I heard about the foundation," he began. "It's incredible, Mom. Really." Joanna folded her hands. "Thank you. I wanted to build something that lasts." He hesitated. "That's what I came to talk about, actually. About what didn't last." She said nothing. Darren looked down, rubbing his temple. "Riley wanted to push you out. It was her idea. The eviction, the house, the legal stuff. I didn't stop her because I thought if I agreed to it, she'd calm down. She said she'd buy you off, give you enough to live comfortably. Said money would fix everything." Joanna's expression didn't change, only her eyes did. Sharp, alert, but unreadable. "And you believed her?" "I wanted to," he said, voice cracking. "She made it sound like peace, like a clean break." Joanna leaned back slightly, studying him. "And when she forged my signature? When she sued me? Was that peace too?" He winced. "I didn't know about that until after. I swear it. She told me she was filing paperwork to protect the family assets. I thought that she'd protect you," Joanna interrupted softly. He nodded, his throat working. "She said she'd take care of everything. I was stupid enough to think that meant all of us." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, but not angry. Joanna had learned that true disappointment didn't need to shout. "I raised you better than that," she said finally. Darren's eyes glistened. "You did." The admission landed like an old truth finally uncovered. For a moment, Joanna almost saw the boy he'd been, the kid who'd brought home stray animals and defended smaller classmates. Then she blinked, and the man who had looked away too many times sat before her again. He took a shaky breath. "She's leaving, Mom. Riley. She said the city doesn't deserve her anymore. She's working with some publisher. Says she's writing a memoir." Joanna arched an eyebrow. "About what?" Darren hesitated, then slid his phone across the table. The screen showed an online post, newly announced just hours ago. "Coming soon, How $85 million Ruined My Life, a tell-all by Riley Mercer. Greed, betrayal, and the truth about a family torn apart by lies." Joanna stared at the glowing headline, then let out a slow exhale that wasn't quite a sigh, more like quiet disbelief. "She's marketing the wreckage." Darren's voice was small. "She says she's going to reclaim her narrative." "People who lose the truth always try to buy it back," Joanna said. "It's cheaper than humility." He laughed weakly, the sound half broken. "You always have the right words." "I had to," she replied. "You never listen to the quiet ones." He looked at her then, really looked at her. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything, for not standing up, for letting her—" "Darren," she said gently, cutting him off. "You don't owe me words, just better choices." He nodded, eyes wet, shame heavy in his posture. "I don't know if I can fix it." Joanna stood and walked to the kitchen window, sunlight spilling across her face. "You can't fix what she broke, but you can stop carrying it." When she turned back, he was staring at his coffee cup, hands trembling slightly. He stood as she approached, but she only smiled faintly, the kind of smile that belonged to forgiveness she hadn't decided to give. "You should go," she said softly. He swallowed. "Mom." She opened the door. "You said what you needed to. Now go decide what you'll be without her voice in your ear." He hesitated, searching her face for any sign of warmth left for him. But all he found was composure, that same calm that had carried her through every storm Riley ever sent. "Okay," he whispered. "Goodbye, Mom." "Goodbye, Darren." The door closed with a soft click. Joanna leaned against it for a moment, eyes closed, her heartbeat steady but tired. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just sad for the things that could have been different if greed hadn't spoken louder than love. She turned toward the table, her gaze landing on the newspaper headlines still visible from that morning. "Retired principal gives back to Arizona students." She smiled faintly. "Let her write her story," she murmured. "I already have mine." Outside, the wind rose, brushing through the rose bush near the mailbox, the one that had taken root and bloomed despite the heat. Across town, Riley sat at her laptop, typing the first line of her memoir. "I thought money would make me powerful, but it just made everyone else honest." The cursor blinked beneath it, waiting for the rest of her confession, or her next lie. When the memoir finally dropped, it wasn't fireworks. It was static. How $85 million ruined my life hit the market with glossy photos, a dramatic tagline, and a ghostwriter whose name was buried deep in the acknowledgments. Riley had expected cameras, interviews, sympathy. What she got instead was silence, followed by laughter. Within a week, local bookstores moved the copies to the clearance table. Reviews on Amazon were merciless. Self-pity disguised as a sob story. She didn't lose her fortune, she lost perspective. Read like one long tantrum. Even her publisher, desperate for controversy, canceled the talk show appearances after the first backlash wave hit. In Ahwatukee, neighbors whispered, she wrote an entire book just to make herself the victim. The gossip wasn't cruel, it was bored. Riley wasn't dangerous anymore, just irrelevant. Joanna first heard about the book's failure from Ellen, who arrived that Saturday morning with a box of muffins and an opinion ready to go. 2 stars on Goodreads, Ellen announced, setting the box down like a trophy. One of them's from Riley's own account. Joanna smiled faintly, cutting open a bag of coffee beans. "That sounds about right." "She's calling it misunderstood art," Ellen said, pouring herself coffee. "Says critics don't like women who speak truth to envy." "Truth?" Joanna asked. "She wouldn't recognize truth if it were notarized." Ellen snorted so hard coffee nearly came out her nose. "You know," she said, leaning back, "from riches to restraining orders. That's a record. Maybe she'll put that in her sequel." Joanna chuckled, shaking her head. "Let her. It'll sell even fewer copies." While Riley's public downfall gathered dust online, Joanna's life turned quietly forward. The house, her house, had settled into peace again, sunlight spilling through the new ocean-colored wallpaper she'd chosen for the kitchen. The soft blue made the mornings feel lighter, the air calmer. She'd started something small, almost accidentally. It began with one neighbor, then 3, then a dozen. Women who'd come by just to talk, to share stories about the weight they carried. Grief, resentment, starting over. They met every other Thursday in Joanna's living room with mismatched chairs and lemon tea. Joanna called it the second chapter circle. They talked about reclaiming things, space, time, voice, peace. Sometimes they cried, sometimes they laughed, sometimes they sat in silence, and that was enough. Ellen handled snacks. Joanna kept notes, and every week, someone would say the same thing as they left. "It feels lighter in here." One late afternoon, as the women lingered after the meeting, The doorbell rang. Milo stood there, crisp suit jacket over his arm, a thin folder in hand. "Sorry to interrupt the congregation," he said with a grin. "It's a circle," Ellen corrected. "No pews, just pastries." Joanna smiled. "Come in, Milo. You're just in time for the tail end of catharsis and cinnamon rolls." He stepped inside, glancing around at the women as they gathered their things. "Looks like you found a new kind of courtroom," he said. "One where everyone actually listens." When they'd gone, he handed Joanna the folder. "Extension's been approved," he said. "Your no-contact order with Riley is active for another 2 years. She can't email, text, post about you, or show up here without risking jail time." Joanna's hands stayed still on the folder. "So this is closure, officially?" Milo nodded. "Legally, yes. Spiritually, that's on you." Joanna smiled faintly. "I think I'm getting there." Ellen raised her glass of tea. "To legal peace, moral superiority, and wallpaper that doesn't scream trauma." They laughed, the sound easy and warm. That night, Joanna stood alone in her kitchen, looking at the new wallpaper. Waves of pale blue and soft gray curling upward like quiet breath. She touched the wall lightly, the color cool under her fingertips. It reminded her of the sea she'd always wanted to visit, but never had. Maybe someday. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Darren. "Mom, I filed the papers today. It's over." She's gone. She read it twice before setting the phone down, her reflection soft in the window pane. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel like it was waiting for something. It just was. Outside, the wind shifted through the lemon tree, the one Thomas had planted decades ago. The air smelled faintly of citrus and dusk. Joanna poured herself a cup of tea and stepped out to the porch. The horizon burned a deep red-orange, the last of the day flickering over the mailbox where the rosebush had grown wild and defiant. Ellen's voice echoed faintly in her mind. "From riches to restraining orders. That's a record." Joanna smiled to herself. "Records are meant to be broken," she murmured. She sat down in her usual chair, watching the sky fade into indigo. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. But as the crickets began to hum and the world settled into dusk, a notification flashed across her phone screen on the porch table. "Breaking, tell-all author Riley Mercer rumored to be shopping TV adaptation of failed memoir." Joanna's smile didn't fade. If anything, it deepened. She reached for the phone, turned it face down, and whispered into the gathering night. "Some people never stop mistaking noise for a pulse." Then she leaned back, closed her eyes, and let the quiet win. The Arizona evening spread across Ahwatukee like melted gold. The sun dipped behind South Mountain, painting every rooftop in amber light. Joanna Mercer sat on her porch, her favorite chair angled toward the west, a book unopened in her lap. The air carried the faint scent of lemon blossoms and something older, the quiet hum of a house that had outlasted its storm. For the first time in years, there was no paper waiting to be signed, no knock to brace for, no voice raised inside these walls, just the wind brushing against the porch screen and the low whir of the ceiling fan. The rosebush by the mailbox, the one she'd planted the day she won her case, had erupted in a spray of deep pink blooms. It had taken root through drought and monsoon, thriving despite it all. Joanna smiled at it, thinking, that's exactly how survival looks. A little scarred, a little stubborn, but still in full color. The creak of the gate pulled her from her thoughts. Ellen stepped through, balancing a glass pitcher of lemonade and 2 mismatched cups. "You know," she said, setting them on the patio table, "I could get used to this new version of peace. No subpoenas, no lawyers, no headlines, just sunsets and citrus." Joanna chuckled. "You make it sound like a retirement ad." "Hey," Ellen said. pouring the lemonade. After the year you've had, peace should be a luxury brand. They sat side by side, the kind of easy silence that exists only between people who've already said everything that mattered. The light shifted from gold to rose to violet. Somewhere down the street, a child's laughter echoed, followed by the bark of a dog. Ellen broke the silence first. You see that mess online? Riley's TV adaptation idea just got shredded by every journalist in town. One headline said, "From Windfall to Whiplash, the Mercer memoir that nobody bought." Joanna smiled faintly. She'll find another stage. People like Riley always do. Ellen leaned back. She's got nowhere left to fall but quiet, and she'll hate that more than anything. Joanna didn't respond. She just watched the horizon. Quiet's never the enemy, she said softly. It's what comes after the noise that defines you. Ellen looked at her for a long moment. You ever think about moving? Starting fresh somewhere coastal? I could see you running a bookstore near the water. Joanna laughed, shaking her head. This house has enough chapters left in it. Besides, I think it's earned me. Ellen smiled knowingly. Fair enough, though if you ever change your mind, I'll pack the lemon tree for you. Their laughter faded into the dusk. Joanna's phone buzzed on the small table between them. She picked it up. A text from Milo. Milo. All files closed. You're protected. The deed, the trust, the order. Everything's final. Joanna's lips curved in a small, peaceful smile. She typed a single reply. Joanna. Good. She set the phone down beside her glass and looked at Ellen. It's done, she said simply. Ellen raised her cup in a small toast. Then here's to closure. They drank to that. To closure. To the long road that led them here. To every small act of defiance that had quietly rebuilt Joanna's life. The porch light flicked on automatically as night began to stretch across the street. Moths fluttered near the glow, soft wings tapping against the glass. Ellen stood after a while, brushing crumbs from her jeans. I should head home before the coyotes decide I look like dinner. You'll be all right? Joanna nodded. I always am. Ellen smiled. That's the part I never doubted. She squeezed Joanna's shoulder before heading toward the gate. See you Thursday. Same time, same muffins. Joanna watched her disappear down the walk, the soft squeak of the gate closing behind her. The quiet returned, deep and familiar. Inside, the house felt cool and alive, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall, the rhythm of her own footsteps on the tile. She paused by her writing desk, where a fresh sheet of stationery waited beside her favorite pen. She sat, smoothing the paper flat, and began to write. Her handwriting was slow, deliberate, almost tender. Dear Joanna, you never needed millions. You just needed your name on the line, and you never once let them erase it. She folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and tucked it inside her journal, the same journal that held receipts, deeds, and little pieces of her life that no court could ever touch. When she returned to the porch, the desert sky had gone fully indigo. Stars blinked faintly between thin streaks of cloud. She sat again, breathing in the soft hum of summer night, the lemon scent, the warmth radiating off the brick steps. Her gaze drifted toward the rose bush, that stubborn blooming thing that refused to die. She won 85 million, Joanna whispered, the words almost a smile, almost a victory. But I walked in with the deed. The wind carried her words out across the quiet neighborhood, scattering them into the dark like seeds. And for the first time, the house felt exactly as it should, still, steady, and entirely her own.